Italy's first female prime minister, Giorgia Meloni, threatens the New World Order. Oh, this is going to be interesting. As I've said in the past, World War III just ended. It was the U.S. against who? Well, in my opinion, it was the U.S. against Europe. And guess who lost? Without a shot fired, the U.S. was able to use the current circumstances to subjugate Europe on nearly every matter. In a prior video, I talked about cultural dominance, economic dominance, energy dominance, military dominance. So many ways America has been able to get Europe under their thumb. And Europe's willingly done it. They're maybe not even aware of what's going on. And they're bringing upon themselves a brutal, brutal winter. And that winter is going to cause pain for Europeans, particularly Germans, but others that are cut off now from gas and energy. And America will try to help by sending natural gas as an example, but it isn't going to plug that gap. And all for the sake that, of course, U.S. is doing everything they can to continue on with trying to destroy Russia. And Russia is attacking Ukraine, of course, right now. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail about what's going on in Italy. So yesterday, it was Monday, and it was 2:15 p.m. here in Bangkok, Thailand. And I decided I would go to Wikipedia to see what they said about the new potential prime minister or president of Italy. And what did I find? This. Supposed to be her face, but instead it was another face. That was Monday the 26th, 2022, 14:15 GMT +7. Did you see this? Well, eventually, a couple of hours later, I went back and refreshed and found this. So why does Wikipedia hate her so much that she's put Mussolini's face, that they've put Mussolini's face or allowed his face to be put on her Wikipedia instead of her face? Well, more on her in a bit. But before we do, let's try to understand what's going on in Italy. Until the global financial crisis, Italy's economy grew in line with Germany and France. However, since then, Italy's economy has stagnated. What we can see right now is this means that its GDP grew by only 14% in 4 years. It's a disaster for Italy. And it gets worse. Italy's unemployment is higher than the EU by far. It's 8% in Italy and 3% in Germany. And youth unemployment is a chronic problem. We can see 25%, 1 in 4 young people between the ages of 15 and 24 are out of work. It's only 5% in Germany. Italy is suffering. Italy also has the second largest government debt to GDP ratio in Europe. I think that there's enough statistics out there to be able to say that the Italian economy, the Italian business environment, the Italian government, it's a lot of mess. And it may not get better anytime soon, no matter who's in power. But one thing you can't deny is that Italians are feeling pain right now, and particularly in anticipation of what's happening with the cutoffs of Russian gas as demanded ultimately by EU. We can also see that Italy is a main transit point for illegal immigrants to Europe. The central Mediterranean route continues to be the most used path to Europe. It accounts for around 23% of all reported illegal border crossings. Now, as I have said, that World War III has just ended. It was the U.S. against who? Against Europe. Without a shot fired, the U.S. has been able to dominate Europe in every way. So now on to the person who may form some resistance to this US dominance. Giorgia Meloni has claimed victory in Italy's election and is likely to be the first female politician, female prime minister. Well, we should all cheer gender diversity and gender opportunity. Fantastic. That's exciting. So, what about Wikipedia and what's going on? Well, let's go and look at her a little bit. And she joined the Youth Front, the youth wing of the Italian social movement in 1992. She was like 15, so she got involved in politics early. She became a national leader of the Student Action, the student movement of National Alliance, and she was a councillor of the province of Rome from 1998 to 2002, after which she became the president of the Youth Action, or the youth wing of AN. And that is National Alliance. Now, she was a member of the Chamber of Deputies in Italy since 2006. She's currently heads the Brothers of Italy, which you can see there, FDL, political party, and has been the president of the European Conservatives and Reformers Party since 2020. Now, in 2008, she was appointed Minister of Youth in the Berlusconi number 4 cabinet, a role which she held until 2011. 2012, she co-founded the Brothers of Italy and became its president in 2014. She took part in the 2014 European Parliament election and in 2016 Rome municipal election as a mayoral candidate. She ended up not getting elected in both of these elections, but as you will see, she learned. After the 2018 election, she led FDL into the opposition during the entire parliamentary legislature, letting the Brothers of Italy grow its popularity in the opinion polls, particularly during the Draghi cabinet, in which Brothers of Italy was the only opposition party. In other words, she pulled a pretty massive stunt, which was to allow the opposing parties to go into the government and staying as an opposition party. And her opponents and the mainstream media have labeled her far right-wing fascist and a national Italian nationalist. Her political opponents describe her political positions as hard right and far right, although she rejects that latter label. Now, Wikipedia describes her as opposed to abortion, euthanasia, partnerships, marriages, and parenting by same-sex couples. And in a speech earlier this year, she outlined her priorities. She said yes to the natural family, no to the LGBT lobby. Yes to sexual identity, no to gender ideology. No to Islamic violence. Yes to secure borders. No to mass migration. No to big international finance. Okay, that's going to get her in trouble. And no to the bureaucrats of Brussels. Okay. So what they don't like, well, she has been opposed to the reception of non-European immigrants, migrants, and multiculturalism. Her opponents accuse her of xenophobia and Islamophobia, but she would claim herself to be a nationalist looking after the country's interests. And here we can see she has supported NATO. She maintains Eurosceptic views regarding the European Union, and she was in favor of better relations with Russia before the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, which she condemned, pledging to keep sending arms to Ukraine. But of course, if that continues to damage Italy, there's going to come some point or some pressure. Now, Ursula von der Leyen, first female European Commission president, she's a German politician who's been serving as a president of the European Commission since 2019. And when asked about the election in Italy, she said, if things go in a difficult direction, I've spoken about Hungary and Poland, we have tools. Well, Ursula, things went in a different direction. What are you going to do? This gives some background on what's happening. Let's talk about it for a couple minutes. I think it's interesting because what I would argue is that America has really gotten control of Europe. Why is it so important for America to get control of Europe? Because America is going to go up against its biggest foe in their own mind, and they've already stated it, and that is China. And so if America decides to go up against China, the last thing that they would want is a Europe that is neutral. In fact, over the last couple of decades, Europe has built very good relationships with China and has been manufacturing back and forth between China and Europe. And so this needed to be broken. They also needed to break the reliance on Russia, which America has done, and the Europeans have accepted that this needs to happen. So all of a sudden, basically what's happening is that nobody kind of expected that sanctioning Russia and not talking with Putin would have caused such a disaster as far as energy, as far as food, all of these things which are rippling around the world. And instead of sitting down and listening to both sides and trying to reconcile what's happening from Russia's perspective and from US and from Ukraine's perspective, basically it's just war, war, war. And the end result is countries like Italy, as an example, we saw 25% youth unemployment, disaster in Italy right now. Same thing in Spain and other countries that have had a really hard time recovering, even from 2008 crisis. These countries are hurting badly. So how much more pressure are they going to put on their own citizens? That's really the question. And I would say that when we look at I'm going to not call her fascist or a far right, because these are labels that we are taught to call each other. And when we do, it basically allows us to write someone off. And I would say that even the word fascist now doesn't have the meaning that it had in the past, because it's just being bantered about and thrown about. The left wing calls the right wing fascist, the right wing calls the left wing fascist. But I would say that she's, right, obviously. And the point is that she's got a different perspective on things. And that different perspective is a threat to what's happening in Europe. And my prediction of what's going to happen in Europe is that European countries are going to start feeling serious pain, and they're going to have to do something, or else their populations are going to revolt. If the populations are going to be running out of food, running out of money, inflation's high, they don't have heat, they don't have energy, people are going to revolt. We've already seen it in Hungary, as we've seen Ursula say about Hungary and also about Poland. If they're not cooperating. If we look at Sweden, just recently had a more of a right-leaning government come in, and now we have Italy. This movement, the pendulum could be swinging, and if that pendulum swings, then you've got a situation where I think there could be trouble for the EU. And I would say that it's going to get harder for America to dominate Europe if individual countries are starting to flex their muscles. The last thing I just want to talk about briefly is the U.S. election. We know the U.S. election is coming up in the first week of November. So, I mean, we're only, 5 weeks away or so? So we're almost there for the U.S. election. And seeing this election moving more right, you could have some panic going on in the U.S. with the Democrat Party, with the risk that they're going to lose their control over the House and the Senate. My prediction at this point for the Democrat Party is that they are going to lose. They have a 1% control over the House, in the seats in the House of Representatives in the U.S. And my expectation is that's going to go to about a 2% majority, so 52% majority held by the Republicans. And I think that the Senate is going to go maybe 1% majority. I think that they could swing even more, but in some of the research, which I'll present over the next week or so, you'll see that actually some of the tools that the Democrats have when working with the social media companies and the media companies are extremely powerful. And those tools will prevent, I suspect, the Republicans from gaining a massive victory. But I would say that this victory in Italy has probably emboldened the Republicans in America, because the pendulum is swinging to a more conservative approach. Those are some of my thoughts on what's happening in Italy and in Europe. Let me know